In a world where wealth is often seen as the ultimate goal, Ireland is facing a unique dilemma. The richest country in Europe is struggling to attract and retain residents. This reality defies all logic, raising a perplexing question that intrigues economists, baffles policymakers, and leaves ordinary citizens scratching their heads. But why do people really hesitate to live in a country that, on paper, promises a life of abundance and opportunity? What underlying issues are lurking beneath the glossy surface of economic statistics? Let's unravel this paradox that challenges our conventional understanding of wealth and prosperity. The Mirage of Wealth. You know how things aren't sometimes what they seem? Well, that's exactly the case with Ireland's economy. On the surface, it looks like a powerhouse. We're talking about an economy that grew by a jaw-dropping 12.2% in gross domestic product, or GDP, terms just last year. That's 4 times the European Union average. But let's not get carried away. According to the Irish Times, about 1,000 US companies operate in Ireland, providing about 100,000 direct jobs. That sounds great, right? But Finance Minister Michael McGrath warns that this isn't the full story. Most of this money isn't benefiting the average Irish citizen. These companies pay billions in wages and contribute significantly to corporation tax. But this money often stays within these corporations and doesn't circulate in the local markets. Now, let's add the tax situation into this mix. Ireland was one of 135 countries that signed an Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, agreement in 2021 to reform how big companies are taxed. The agreement aims to prevent multinationals from moving their profits around the world to minimize their tax bills. One key point of this OECD deal is the implementation of a minimum 15% effective tax rate on the profits of companies with an annual turnover exceeding 750 million euros. Previously, Ireland's corporate tax rate was 12.5%, which was one of its major attractions for foreign companies. However, with the new OECD agreement, Ireland will have 2 headline rates, 12.5% and 15%. This change is expected to increase Ireland's corporate tax revenue by about 3.5 to 4.5 billion euros based on last year's figures. But it also means that Ireland could lose 2 billion euros or more due to the relocation of where big companies pay some corporation tax. Now, why does this matter for attracting residents? First, the change in tax rates could make Ireland less attractive to multinational companies, which are a significant source of high-paying jobs. If these companies decide to leave or reduce their operations in Ireland, it could lead to job losses and make the country less appealing for both domestic and foreign talent. Second, the new tax structure could also impact the Future Ireland Fund, which aims to build a financial cushion for the country's future. If big companies leave, filling up this fund would become more challenging, affecting long-term economic stability. And it's not just US companies. About 80% of the corporation tax receipts in Ireland come from foreign-owned companies from various parts of the world. Patrick Honohan, Ireland's former central bank governor, adds another layer to this complex issue. He points out that Ireland's actual wealth is quite modest in European terms. The GDP is distorted mainly by the presence of more than 1,500 multinationals. When these companies make accounting moves to take advantage of Ireland's low-tax environment, it inflates the nation's GDP, making it look more robust than it actually is. So, what we have here is a mirage of wealth. Ireland's economy may look strong on paper, but it's heavily dependent on factors that are not entirely within its control. If these corporations decide to leave for better commercial deals elsewhere, especially due to changes in tax laws, it could expose the fragility of Ireland's economic model. A tale of 2 Irelands. Now, let's dig a little deeper into this puzzling situation. Ireland is like a coin with 2 very different sides. On one side, you have this glamorous image of a country filled with high-tech companies and well-paid jobs. These are the jobs that attract top talent from around the world. But on the other side, the majority of Irish people aren't working for these tech giants. Nope, they're employed in what's called the domestic economy. These are your everyday jobs that don't pay nearly as much as those fancy tech positions. So while one part of Ireland is living it up, the other part is struggling to make ends meet. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's just how economies work, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Ireland's economy looks amazing on paper, mostly because of the big companies we just discussed. But this money doesn't really benefit most Irish people. Imagine you're in a classroom, and one kid gets an A+ on every test, while everyone else gets C's and D's. If you average those grades, it might look like the class is doing great, but that one A+ is skewing the whole picture. That's what's happening in Ireland. A few big companies are making so much money that it's like that one kid getting all the A+, while most people are just getting by. In addition, Ireland's economy is navigating a complex landscape, with challenges like a 6% rise in energy prices and an inflation rate hovering around 3%. The cost of living index has risen by 5% in the past year alone, putting a squeeze on household budgets. Some financial analysts are cautioning that the economic boom may be tapering off. The tech sector in Ireland has seen a 12% growth in the last year, and the pharmaceutical industry has also been robust, contributing 40 billion euros to the economy. But it's a different story for other sectors. Construction has contracted by 8%, and the arts sector has seen a 15% decline, the highest in the European Union. Now, let's talk about an even murkier issue: Ireland's national debt. At the end of last year, the country's national debt was estimated 226 billion euros, which is one of the highest per capita debt burdens in the world. While the debt might not seem like an immediate issue, it's a ticking time bomb that could explode under certain conditions. For instance, if there's a sudden economic downturn or significant drop in corporation tax receipts, the country could find itself in hot water. The government has even set up a national reserve fund with an additional 4 billion euros as a safety net, but that might not be enough if things go south. Now, you might wonder why the debt is such a big deal when the country is doing so well on paper. Well, that's where the illusion shatters. The debt is a constraint on the country's future operations. As the population ages, Ireland will need more funds for healthcare and social services. On top of that, the country has ambitious plans for a green transition, which will also require significant investment. So where will the money come from? Higher taxes are inevitable, and that's not something residents look forward to. Before we unravel the complexities of Ireland's looming high taxes, what that means for its debt structure, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Now, back to our story. Ireland is already eyeing high taxes. The icing on the cake, but not in a good way. The debt is structured in a way that insulates Ireland from short-term interest rate increases. About 3/4 of the national debt has interest rates below 2%, and the average maturity of the debt is over 10 years. Sounds good? Not so fast. Bond rates have risen, which means refinancing the debt will cost more in the future. The public finances are also vulnerable to shocks, especially from the corporate sector. A majority of the debt is locked in at fixed prices and relatively long maturities, which offers some protection. However, any significant changes in the corporate tax structure or a downturn in the multinational sector could result in a large deficit. So, while Ireland may appear to be a land of prosperity, the reality is far more complicated. The national debt is a sword hanging over the country's head, and it's only a matter of time before the blade falls. Migration crisis and its impact. Now, let's talk about the migration crisis in Europe. You might think it's just a bunch of people moving around, but it's way more complicated than that. Imagine you're in a room full of people, and suddenly everyone starts rushing to one corner. That corner is Europe, and it's getting crowded. According to the European Commission, as of January 2022, there were 446.7 million people living in the European Union. 23.8 million of them were not from member states. And guess what? Most of these people are here for work or family reasons. Now, you might be wondering, why is this a problem for rich countries like Ireland? Well, it's like adding more weight to a boat that's already sinking. Europe's new migration crisis is at its highest since 2016, and it's affecting the southern routes between Africa and Europe the most. The European Union Border Agency, Frontex, reported that there were 86,000 returns in 2022, but that number hasn't changed much from the previous year. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Some countries are not willing to take back their citizens who have been ordered to leave the European bloc. It's like a game of hot potato. Nobody wants to be left holding it. This is causing a lot of tension and making it hard for countries like Ireland to manage their own resident issues. So while Ireland is dealing with its own problems, this migration crisis is like a curveball thrown into an already complicated game. The future for Ireland is uncertain, and it's unclear how the country will navigate these challenges. Will it find alternative ways to sustain its economy, or will it face difficulties that make it less appealing to residents? That's it for today. Hope you got value while watching the video, and if you still have questions or comments, don't hesitate to share them in the comments section below. And if you are interested in more videos about economics, make sure to check out the video linked on the screen next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.